Hello and welcome back to a new video once again. My name is Olo and today we're talking about Breath of the Wild 2, the upcoming Zelda sequel to one of the best games I've ever played. It's safe to say that many of us are excited about this surprise sequel, including the devs, who actually did not plan on creating this sequel originally. Today, while we continue our long wait for this next Zelda release, let's talk about some of the fun topics and theories surrounding the game, what they're based on, and if they're likely or not. Before we crack on into all of that though, let's first talk about what we do know for certain, then jump into the rumors. Firstly, the dev comment I just made a second ago. This sequel was never actually planned. It was originally this standalone new title for the Switch with lots of DLC planned down the line. But as far as the game goes, Breath of the Wild was a powerhouse of creativity and exploration. I can't name a game I've enjoyed more in terms of the open world setting and actually randomly exploring with no specific objective, just finding gold in a specific special event, interaction, secret or battle that I found at random. The game was crammed with different possibilities and ways to approach each and every scenario. It was very clear the devs had a lot of ideas for this game, so many in fact that when it came to create those DLCs they had planned, they had too many ideas, too many options, so much so that they could not do it justice if it wasn't a fully fledged sequel to let them properly explore these more expansive ideas, and with that, its very dark theme. Now, we know from the original cinematic trailer, this sequel is not only set to be much more dark than the original, but more than that, quoted to be the darkest Zelda game ever released, much more like, specifically mentioning, Majora's Mask, which was certainly one of the darker storylines in the Zelda series, which is exciting as a different direction in contrast to the bright and, well, childish nature of the original. The story was kind of loose and varied, letting you discover what had happened to the land through various memories and then piecing it together in the order of those events too, leaving you with that final task of defeating Ganon and saving Hyrule. Now, if it's going to be specifically darker, I think this time we're going to have more of an ongoing direct story throughout the whole playthrough, and since it's actually set in the same world, in that very same engine as the original, it's been reported to be progressing well. Development is obviously easier when you're not building from the ground up and have sort of a foundation to rely on and then progress upon. Not to mention, it's also the same map, they're just altering it, yeah, massively, but they're altering it. It's a big task and it still takes years, but it's certainly a lot easier to accomplish in a smaller time frame all the same. Finally, for our last note on what is certain about this sequel, it's that we can certainly hope for more news on this game sometime this year. Since E3 was cancelled due to COVID-19, many publishers and companies in the gaming world have been holding their own events and showcases via their own mini events. We're seeing developers give short presentations followed by the gameplay or trailers from their own homes, which is sure less than ideal, but at least the news is still being announced. And because of that, the publishers haven't been forced to sort of throw out and show anything they can for the E3 deadline. They're able to show it when it's good and ready. This has led to more spread out gaming news and announcements throughout the months, which I actually prefer. I certainly imagine Nintendo will let us know how things stand with Breath of the Wild 2 soon with their own showcase, so here's hoping. Okay, so those are the main things that we know. Now let's jump into the speculation and discussions based around leaks or rumors and where that leaves us. And let's start with the main thing, the release date. Now, there was a leak a while back ago that had the set release date of the sequel for sometime 2020, probably late in the year. However, this leak came well before the situation that we're dealing with in the world today, and because of that, many games have been delayed understandably. Now we know that the game has been delayed in some form, we just didn't exactly know what the original timeline was and also what it was pushed back to. Given that despite what I just mentioned about devs showcasing their games more freely, we are now halfway through 2020 and we haven't had a gameplay trailer or, well, anything since that original teaser. So considering that, I think it's very safe to say that the game won't release until 2021 next year. On top of all of that, next year is the 35th anniversary of Zelda, so it would make a lot of sense. But on the bright side, this does make me feel more and more certain that we'll get a new showcase or trailer and information with it later this year, perhaps in the very next quarter. Now let's talk about the game itself. Right now, we're all wondering what this game will actually be. How will it work? And how will it be fresh and fun if it's set in the very same map? What's the objective even? Since we have kind of defeated Ganon, and it certainly hasn't been like hundreds or even thousands of years since that event for some new generation of Zelda and Link to defeat. The game is actually set not long after the events of the original after all. Now fortunately, we do have some rumors talking about this. Let's start with the opening of the game, which is apparently set to be much more linear this time compared to the original. Since in the original we were able to freely explore the plateau tutorial section in any direction we wanted, and then once that's completed, which is pretty short, we can head out into the world properly in any direction of our choice. And this makes sense since we've kind of discovered all of the towers and restored the land and logically kind of explored everywhere. So a very clear direction for the opening of the game would be, well, important. To combat the fully discovered map, we're going to be dealing with sort of miasmic versions of Ganon, clouds that cover massive sections of the land that once we clear up then allows us to access that chunk of land, retaking it from Ganon's cloudy presence apparently. I imagine these are going to look similar to the giant cloud that patrolled Hyrule Castle in the original game in maybe a lesser form, or maybe this weird goop that's moving around in the dungeons on the underground here in this teaser trailer for Breath of the Wild 2. To match these areas that we must retake is the concept that each location will be deeper and deeper overall, less sparse. The original game was free and open with massive areas of nothing to traverse, you know, big open fields. You gotta explore and find the secrets. But generally, those secrets were kinda found them and we're done. Instead, we should expect more dense content via dungeons across the land. Which is great news if true, because one of the main complaints for the original definitely would be the lack of its dedicated dungeons like the previous titles in the series. Yeah, we had the Divine Beasts as a form of dungeon, and yeah, we had the Shrines too, which featured many mini puzzles or battles to beat. They were both great, fun and varied, but I think it's fair to say they were much shorter than they were sweet, over pretty quickly compared to the massive dungeons of past titles. Now in that teaser trailer, we see Link and Zelda exploring one of these dungeons. Firstly, yeah, it's creepy as fuck, and secondly, that would be the type of thing to properly explore compared to these short shrines of the original. But where do these dungeons come from? What's going on with that? At the end of the trailer, the very castle of Hyrule begins to rumble, and then rise. It seems like the land is beginning to float for some unknown reason. Areas of this land are being ripped out of the ground and flying away to hang in the air, leaving behind massive craters, and with those craters, the secrets underneath. These giant craters will become big new sections on the map, and inside of them are tunnels, which function as entrances to various dungeons. Now that's such a cool concept, and kind of a logical setup to make this old map new and fresh again. Fight to unveil the land, and then explore what's changed, and also what's under Hyrule. Plus, you know, the land that's floating up in the air, maybe there's something going on up there to discover too. I think the question of why is all of this happening is pretty fair at this point, and what's been speculated right now is that it might have something to do with the Twilight Realm again. That circular visual around Ganon in the trailer certainly looks similar to the magic of the Shadow People who tried to take the power from the Hylians, reminding us of the Twilight architecture. If you compare the spiral visuals to, say, the Twilight portals during the original invasion, it really does look similar. And perhaps this is a new invasion. Perhaps we'll get to visit the Twilight Realm in this game, or maybe it'll visit us. Considering that we defeated Ganon, you know, what's going on here with what we assume is Ganon? Why is he being revived? Who is reviving him? Or maybe he's not being revived at all and they're just using the power from his body. Maybe that power is enough to manipulate the land. I'm not saying we're going to see like Midna again, but I think it's possible that the Twili could be used again for this storyline. So there's some story rumors. Now let's talk about some to do with the game mechanics, like maybe new items. Yeah, we certainly had new items in the form of the Sheikah Slate, and with it those special abilities. But what was kind of missing from Breath of the Wild was the tools, you know, grappling hooks, boomerangs, slingshot, you know, that kind of stuff. Items like this would let you progress previously unpassable areas or defeat previously unbeatable enemies. Mechanics like that, certainly missing from the original, weren't entirely necessary though, because you could kind of just climb anything, bypass anything, so these gadgets weren't as necessary. The freedom of the climbing and the Sheikah Slate was awesome, don't get me wrong, I don't want that to be removed, but I certainly would like to see some sort of futuristic Sheikah tools, maybe more combat focused, like a futuristic slingshot or whatever. Now, since we're talking about equipment, a major aspect of the original was that durability on equipment. From swords to bows or shields, everything you used would eventually run out of juice and break. Now that led to varied gameplay in the type of weapons that you were actively using. Sometimes you were using whatever you had on hand because you had no choice, getting deeper and deeper into the game until you had like a bunch of awesome weapons you rotated through. Personally, I really liked this feature and I loved the type of gameplay that it ended up creating, but it certainly wasn't without its flaws. It was really annoying to find a fantastic weapon or item and want to use it for a good little while, only for it to break on you just 10 minutes into use. It's really tough because I do like both systems and kind of want both at once, which is where a difficulty mode comes in. There's been word on a normal mode and an easy mode for the sequel, which is somewhat controversial to people who want hard games to be hard, but to be fair, this is a Zelda game. It's a kid's game in many ways, right? The specifics of the easy mode aren't exactly what you might imagine. It's not going to make everything easier by default, like lower health bosses, you just do more damage, or maybe you get more health by default. That kind of thing you'd expect from a normal easy mode. But in this sequel, they're talking about reducing or even removing the durability effect on equipment entirely to allow players to use that favorite weapon or preferred weapon for as long as they'd like, even if that might be for the entire playthrough. I don't know, what do you think about this? I do think it's good to have the option there if you want it, but I probably wouldn't use it myself. Finally though, this one keeps coming up everywhere, so we better talk about it. It was certainly in most of the articles I read about this type of stuff. Playable Zelda. Obviously, she's got that shorter haircut now, and many players are talking about it. Like, why would she cut her hair so short? I don't know, man. Maybe she just likes how it looks. I mean, it looks pretty good, but it might actually have a genuine reason. It's certainly a lot easier to get into melee combat when you don't have a tangle of hair getting in your eyes and in the way. I mean, it's obviously true that she's joining Link in this adventure in a new way here, as she joins him down in the dungeon in the cinematic. Part of the journey, going into the dangerous place together. So perhaps she will be a playable character at certain times. What people are suggesting right now is that she might be required for puzzles in the new dungeons, and maybe she's playable during that time to help bypass what you wouldn't be able to do on your own. Personally, I think I'd prefer if she was either fully playable the whole time, or you swap between the characters depending on maybe a current story section. I feel like it would be kind of irritating to be limited to only ever playing her in dungeons, but I guess I would understand that. There's also the idea, and to be fair, I don't think this is particularly likely, but it could be a sort of co-op mechanic for local or online play, in which you can play as Zelda and Link together with a friend. Multiplayer Breath of the Wild. That would be wild. But yeah, I'm not sure how possible that would be, and I'm not sure if that'll happen in this game. Either way though, I would love a playable Zelda in any form. Getting to use her magic in combat would be probably pretty cool, alongside her being more actively involved in the story. I mean, Zelda ain't no pushover, man. Don't forget about Sheik. Alright, so there you have it. Some of the main rumors that I've been reading about, alongside what we do know about the game so far, to think about while we wait on the release, or at very least the next trailer. What do you think is plausible here? I really like what I've been hearing about, but who knows if any of it is actually true. I mean, these aren't the only rumors I've read either. There has been some wild stuff out there that's kind of silly, but yeah, fun to think about. But personally, I prefer only talking about rumors in a video like this that have some genuine basis, where there's history or leaks around them. Anyway, for now, that's all I've got. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Hollow, you've been you, and I'll see you next time.